Welcome into the Nothing Pro Football Podcast. I'm your host, Michaela Vernava, joined as usual by our analyst, Patriots beat writer, Doug Kyed. Doug, how are you today? How are things going down in Foxborough?
Things are going well. We're kind of in that dog days of the off season, but we've also got cuts all around us, so it's still an exciting time.
Yeah, lots going on. And coming out of that third preseason game in Carolina, I know that everyone's a little concerned about Jimmy Garoppolo. What were your impressions of him in that game and what he needs to do better?
It was definitely his worst preseason performance of this summer, but that's also kind of to be expected because, as we talked about last week, the Panthers defense is no joke. They've got a ton of good weapons in there. The front seven is good. They're dangerous. They're fast. They're everything. They were in the Super Bowl last year. So, I think that it was a little bit concerning because he did seem a little off. He did seem a little flustered. He didn't seem to be the same type of quarterback that we saw in the first two preseason games or even through most of the training camp. But, it's still a preseason game, so he's going to take more risks, and it's not a real game. So I think that, everyone should probably be seeing their frustrations or their concern a little bit, and I think he will still be fine heading into the regular season.
What concerned me, though, is that this was kind of our first real showing of him away at a great competitor on their turf, again, against a great defense, and that's what they're going to be seeing in Arizona. The Cardinals have a good defense. They're on their turf. Is that an indication of the jitters he has when he's not playing at Gillette Stadium?
It could be, and I've always kind of chalked that game up to a loss all summer as it is. I know that that's not really the way that the Patriots can go into that game, and it's not the way the fans are going to go into that game. But I think it's also worth mentioning that he didn't have Rob Gronkowski. The offense is still kind of in flux a little bit. Who knows who's going to be starting at right guard? Julian Edelman was definitely rusty. It was his first game back. So I think that he'll definitely be better in that game, but I think it's completely fair to expect him to struggle at least a little bit since it is the first start of his NFL career. It is on the road. It is against a good defense. And, yeah, I think that is kind of to be expected a little bit.
Yeah, of course, when he's surrounded by one, things should be looking better. But what also concerned me a lot, there's one play that stuck out specifically where I was like, whoa. It was when Jimmy scrambled away from the safety, and then in comes Thomas Davis, who is an absolute beast. And I'm thinking to myself, for the sake of the Patriots, Garoppolo, get down. And he not only doesn't just get down, protect himself, which is the main concern for the Patriots, then also he ends up fumbling the ball because he's not protecting it. That was a surprising play to me. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, he does have to be smarter with the football, and it's entirely possible that during a regular season game, he would throw that ball away. I think that at that point he was probably frustrated. It was a little bit later in the game for him. I think he wanted to kind of get something going at that point, especially I think it was after Brady had already been in. Is that right?
It was. I think it was, yeah. Brady come in and then
had come in.
Garoppolo came back, yeah.
Brady threw a touchdown. I'm sure that Garoppolo wanted to, show a little bit for himself, show his mobility. So, that is a play that maybe, hopefully, Garoppolo wouldn't make during the regular season. But it's also a teaching point that Bill Belichick can yell and scream at Garoppolo and tell him to never do that again. And, for the Patriots' sake, hopefully that sticks at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what the preseason's for. I'd rather see those kinks get ironed out now than when it actually matters. But speaking of them swapping, I did find it funny that it sort of seemed like it was Cam Newton went out, Derek Anderson came in, and then we saw Tom Brady back out, then Newton's back out, then Garoppolo's back out. It was like the dueling quarterbacks all trying to assert themselves, sort of.
And none of them played very well. So it was even more interesting in that regard that Garoppolo struggled. Brady went 3 of 9. Cam Newton threw 2 interceptions. Derek Anderson threw 1 interception. So, I think that all around the board, you'd expect, maybe not Derek Anderson, but the other 3 quarterbacks but certainly be better when the games actually matter.
Yeah, it was a weird game. And I
Definitely.
mean, Diaz is usually pretty solid. He's one of the better backups in the league.
Right, yeah, no, I agree with that.
And even when, and not that he was the whole game, but when Cam was on point, his receivers, there was one play that sticks out that Ed Dixon just dropped one that was right into his hands. It was just a weird game all around.
His receivers were doing him no favors whatsoever, and, one of his interceptions was just a really great play by Chris Long to drop back into coverage, get his hand on the ball, and then tip it back to Devin McCourty. Obviously, you can blame that a little bit on Newton because he didn't expect Chris Long to be there, but it was also just a very good play by the Patriots defense.
Yeah, the one bright spot that I saw out of Cam was just his sheer athleticism on display again. I remember one play where Geno Grissom, I was like, how did he just get away from that? Geno Grissom was pretty much hanging off his thigh, and Cam somehow got away. But, yeah, other than that, just strange play all around by the quarterback. But sticking with Garoppolo, because I know that that's what everyone in New England sort of has their eyes on right now as we get ready for the regular season. What did he have to say this week about his performance?
Not a whole lot. Jimmy never really says a whole lot to the media, which, that's very smart if he wants to stick around here. But, he's usually pretty positive about things. And he always kind of says, there's good things and there's bad things, and there's good plays out there and everything. But, no, I wouldn't say that he was overly hard on himself, but he never really is. He does a really good job of keeping an even keel, and I guess that's kind of what you have to do when you're put in this almost impossible situation like he is, to come in and relieve perhaps the greatest quarterback of all time. He can't get too high, can't get too low, and that really is that's the cliche around New England. But there are times that I kind of think that Jimmy kind of buys into it and believes it.
Yeah, no, I was at first going to jokingly say, so he's just working hard every day,
yeah.
working hard. But, I mean, it is true when I think about anytime I see him up at the podium, anytime we hear from him, he does seem genuinely pretty calm and measured, and which is a good thing because when we talk about everyone saying, is it jitters getting in the way, he's on a big stage. But yeah, he does seem to be taking everything pretty well, and that's evident in the way he deals with media.
I think that's kind of who he is, too, because I was at the 2014 draft in New York, and Garoppolo spoke at the podium at Radio City Music Hall, and honestly, he's not that much different now than he was then. He was even-keeled, and I'm sure that's part of the reason why the Patriots were interested in drafting a guy like that.
I was just going to say, now we know the real reason why Bill Belichick wanted him.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of controversy there. He's not going to say anything outlandish, and if Jimmy Garoppolo went to the Bills, for instance, it's not going to happen because Tyrod Taylor just got a new contract, but with a coach like Rex Ryan, I don't think that next season all of a sudden we'd see Jimmy Garoppolo making headlines with things that he's saying. I think that he would stay pretty much the same guy and stay saying the same things that we've always kind of heard from him.
Yeah, well, speaking of kind of not saying much, but in a very different way, Brian Stork is one guy who we never got much from, caused a lot of frustration for media members out there, had an interesting attitude. The Stork saga has finally come to a close. Do you have any closing thoughts on that situation?
Well, I'm sure that I speak for many media members when I say that he won't be sorely missed in the locker room, and that's not to speak about who he is as a person, because I'm sure that we don't get the full, Brian Stork. But no, he did not give very long answers. There was one interview that I did with him, 10 questions, lasted 55 seconds, and that's pretty much what you got with Brian Stork. So, yeah, I mean, it just didn't seem to work out. He was a 2014 fourth-round pick, same class as Garoppolo. He's good buddies with Garoppolo, but I think for a number of reasons, both injuries and his temperament on the field, the Patriots just had enough of it. So
just a combination of factors that really led to that, between attitude, concussions, and then how much does having David Andrews come into play?
Oh, that's definitely huge. Andrews proved last year that he's a capable starter, and No, I mean, even when Stork was drafted, I remember speaking to a scout at the time who said that he was off draft boards because of his injuries. He had neck injuries, he had back injuries, he had a knee injury, he had an ankle injury, and then since he's come into the NFL, concussions have become a big problem. So it's really not that big of a surprise that he failed the physical, and the fact that he was so kind of banged up certainly had a lot to do with why he was cut, and the fact that he gets into fights during games and practices certainly doesn't help as well.
Mm-hmm. So long to Brian Stork, and also no pot roast in New England this year. What were your thoughts on Terrence Knighton being cut?
No, I was actually kind of surprised. Even after he struggled in that second preseason game, I figured that since he's been so good throughout his NFL career, that the kind of player that the Patriots might be willing to give a few weeks into the regular season to take a look at. They even gave Albert Hainsworth time to try to kind of pull it together. So I figured that he was the type of guy who would stick around for maybe 4 or 5 weeks, and then if it wasn't working out at that point, maybe cut him during the regular season. But Patriots didn't wait. I think that has a lot to do with how other guys have played this preseason. I think that they want to keep Anthony Johnson around. He's been impressive during the preseason. And Vincent Valentine, the third-round pick, a lot of people kind of assume that he might be redshirted during his rookie season, but he's been pretty solid out there during preseason games. So I think that kind of it loses the necessity to have an extra defensive tackle in that group when you can play your rookie during the regular season.
And sticking on that side of the ball now, Alan Branch, we know he was suspended, and I found his quote to be interesting. If Bill Belichick ain't telling you all, I ain't saying a darn thing. Any news on what went on there at all, even though he hasn't given up much?
Nothing. And, that might be the type of thing that we might never find out, or might find out, 5-10 years from now. But no, he didn't have anything to say on the matter, and that wasn't surprising. He's a different kind of character, but for the most part, he is a good soldier with the Patriots. So I was not expecting him to come into the locker room ranting and raving about what caused the suspension.
So what do you think his future is looking like on the team?
I think he makes the team. I don't think that there's a ton of questions about that at this point, because if the Patriots were so fed up with him that they would think about releasing him, I think that they would have done that rather than go through the embarrassment of suspending him. So I think that he's on this roster. And, the 6'6" guys who are 350 pounds and move as well as Alan Branch are pretty difficult to find. So I think with a player like that, you're kind of willing to put up with some of the things that go along with it. And I think that's why he did get that suspension rather than being released. Plus, they picked up a roster bonus for him this offseason that basically guarantees, I think it's about $750,000. So for them to release him at this point would just be really bad business.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking ahead at the Giants game coming up, the final preseason game, and what we'll be looking for. First, I want to start off with which quarterback do you think is going to start?
That's the $64,000 question, as Bill Belichick put it last week. A very dated reference going back to a 50s and 60s game show. I don't know. I think it will be Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that makes the most sense. But at the same time, I don't think that you want Garoppolo to be in there very long. There has been some speculation that perhaps Jacoby Brissett could start. I would think that would be a little bit odd, but there has been enough smoke there that there might be some fire as well. I'm sure that Tom Brady wishes he would start, but at this point, I'm not sure how logical that is. Maybe get him a few snaps, but it's just so difficult to predict this Patriots quarterback situation and all of the stuff that's been going on with Brady this year with the cut finger and the memorial services and the personal matter. It just makes it so much more difficult to predict what's going on. So I'm basically just throwing my hands in the air and saying I have no friggin' clue.
I respect that, absolutely. So quarterbacks aside, what's the biggest thing we're going to need to have our eyes on in this game, and what will the Patriots be trying to get out of this final preseason game?
It's much of the same as we've seen throughout the preseason, and it's these roster battles. And the most intriguing ones right now are running back and cornerback. That fourth running back position is still kind of up for grabs. The Patriots have a few choices. They can either keep DJ Foster or Tyler Gaffney. They can keep neither, or they can make a trade to bring in another running back. At this point, I'm not sure if Gaffney or Foster have done enough to really solidify their spot on that roster, which makes it even a little bit more complicated. So I think with another game like Foster had last week, perhaps he could be that fourth running back, that backup third down back who's got a lot of potential. And at cornerback, Crayvon LeBlanc, Jonathan Jones, and Darryl Roberts are all fighting for that fifth spot. And I'm sure the Patriots wish that they could keep all three of those players because they've all been impressive. They all have a ton of upside. They've all been good. But there's only so many spots that you can keep at cornerback. So they'll probably only be able to pick one of those players and then hope that the other two make it down to the practice squad without another team claiming them. And I think that could be difficult. I think there could be some teams out there that are looking at those players and perhaps looking to bring them in to their 53-man roster.
Well, speaking of running backs just a second ago, how about that play by LeGarrette Blount in Carolina when he hurdled those guys? He could definitely have a future in track if football doesn't work out for him, although it's working out for him pretty well so far.
Yeah, that was pretty good for a 250-pound guy. I think that he has shown a decent amount of burst this offseason, and I think that he will be that starting running back. So now that was some impressive stuff from Blount right there.
Yeah, I was like, hey, is he trying to compete with Jamie Collins for most athletic on the roster? That was pretty impressive.
Oh, yeah, 6 foot, 250 pounds, jumping over safeties. That's some good stuff from Mr. Blount there.
Well, hey, Doug, I had a chance to talk with NFL media national insider Ian Rapoport, so let's take a listen to that call. What do you say?
Absolutely.
Michaela Vernava, I'm joined on the line by the Ian Rapoport, NFL media national insider. Ian, thanks so much for talking with us today.
No problem. What's going on?
Well, I want to start things right off with a team that I know you are pretty familiar with, having covered them a bit back in the day, the New England Patriots. I want to get right into the Brady-Garoppolo drama, the rumblings that Brady maybe doesn't want to help Jimmy Garoppolo. Is there any inside information, any light you can shed on these rumors?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way Tom Brady works, and it's interesting that this is sort of going around now, and it's interesting that this is kind of up for discussion because it's always a discussion with sort of franchise quarterbacks, and it's really the reality is it's not Tom Brady's job to help someone else beat him out. It's just not. Like it's not his job. It's not anyone's job to help a younger person succeed them. Sometimes you do. Sometimes people are really nice about it. Sometimes you're not. I really don't. How do I say this? I really don't care. The only thing that matters to Patriots people is how well Tom Brady plays on the football field, and how well Jimmy Garoppolo plays on the football field. And I think the best thing that Brady does, and he's been doing it for years, is he allows backups to watch him. I don't know that he's holding Jimmy Garoppolo's hand through film study, but Garoppolo gets drafted by the Patriots and he gets a front row seat to watch Tom Brady work. That probably is more valuable than any other backup could possibly get.
Wouldn't it be in Brady's best interest to make sure that he does absolutely anything and everything he can to make sure that Jimmy Garoppolo plays the best that he possibly can in those first 4 games, rather than anyone that's saying that he is possibly worried that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to swoop in and steal his job?
No, I mean, to me, I'm sorry, I just don't see that as Tom Brady's responsibility. I think the best case scenario for Tom Brady is that the team is just okay. And, obviously he wants the Patriots to win. He's a member of the Patriots. He's a huge, face of the franchise and all that, so he wants them to win. But there has to be a personal side to this where he is allowed to be a human being, where, yes, it's okay for him to not want someone else to come in and do great in his position. I'm sure some of his not wanting to be suspended was not wanting to have his backup come in and audition for his job either next year or the year after, whenever it is. It is only human, and despite what you see on the football field, Tom Brady is human. I think it's completely normal for him to have some nerves about watching Jimmy Garoppolo play. I'm sure it's completely normal for him to root for him, kind of. as is the case with every single veteran who gets injured or suspended, watching someone come in and try to take their job, because all you need to know, because all you really need to know is how Tom Brady got his job. He gets it. He knows.
Right. But every veteran isn't Tom Brady. Do you think that Jimmy G poses a threat to Brady's job at this point?
At this point, no. But in 2 years, yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I remember very vividly when Andrea Kramer with us sat down with Brady to open the season last year and asked him, do you think you're going to be cut eventually? And he said, absolutely. And he's right. He's going to be, unless he retires. It is just the reality of life in the NFL. And Brady knows it because he saw it happen to the guy who was the franchise quarterback, before him. And so, it's a situation where it's hard for me to see, Brady get criticized for this or whatever, or supposedly get criticized for, not helping Jimmy Garoppolo enough. I just don't think that's his job. He has to be allowed to be a human being who is fighting for his job like everybody else.
So you said that in the best case for Brady, Jimmy G does okay. Garoppolo does okay for the first 4 games. So let's say Garoppolo does do just okay for the first 4 games. Does that mean, given this suspension, is this the year where we see another AFC East team finally slide in and dethrone the Patriots, do you think?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, every year people pick whatever hot AFC East team there is. They're primed to beat the Patriots, they're primed to take them down, whatever. And you look at the last more than a decade, and I think it happened just one time with the Dolphins. So, to me, it's like if I do my picks, I'm never picking against the Patriots to win the East until someone else comes in and does it first, because otherwise you go through the same thing every year, saying, oh, this is going to be the year. And then the Patriots are too good, their system is too good, their coaching staff is too good, the way they develop players. I think it'll be the Patriots again.
Well, there is a lot of chatter league-wide about quarterbacks right now, a lot going on. And as we were just talking about the way Tom Brady got his job years ago, now we have in Dallas Dak Prescott coming in. I have already heard this situation be likened to the Brady Bledsoe situation. I'm hearing him be called a fantasy must-add. Do you think he deserves all this hype, or are we jumping to conclusions here?
I think this happens with the Cowboys. Of course we're jumping to conclusions, but he has looked very good in the preseason. So I would be, if it was all fool's gold, then I would think we would know. But, I remember praising Blaine Gabbert for how he looked in the preseason his second year with Jacksonville, and he went out and was terrible. So we'll see, but, I think there's a lot to like about Dak Prescott. I don't exactly know what makes a quarterback go from like really good draftable player to great franchise quarterback, because you see talented guys struggle all the time. But I also know that, Dak Prescott does not look overwhelmed. He doesn't look like he's freaked out. He looks like he belongs there. And I think that in itself is a really big deal.
Well, now, what's the latest on the rumors that there could be a trade involving Denver and Dallas and Mark Sanchez?
Yeah, I don't think anything's going to happen today. We'll see. It's still early. And, I know Sanchez would obviously have to take a pay cut to get there. But it is amazing, It's like I remember the Patriots getting criticized for drafting Garoppolo a couple of years ago. People thought they could have added a playmaker. To me, you have to be set at quarterback 2 times over. I don't blame the Eagles for what they did, paying all that money for 3 high-priced quarterbacks. You have to be set there. The Cowboys are, because of injuries, obviously, they're really struggling. And so I would imagine they'll make a move, not to be a starter, but to have a veteran come in and be backup. We'll see which way they go. Maybe they claim Zach Mettenberger on waivers. I think that's possible. As far as Sanchez, if it's not the Cowboys, I don't know where else it's going to be. That's an issue.
Well, now, do you think that the Broncos are set at quarterback? Were you surprised that Trevor Siemian was named the starter?
I would have been surprised 3 months ago, but the more he hung around in this quarterback race, the more it seemed that this was a possibility. And I think one thing Gary Kubiak has done, and similar to what the Patriots do, is that once you get in their building, they literally don't care where you come from. They don't care. 7th round, undrafted, big time, free agent pickup, whatever. It's all based on what you are on the field. I'll never forget when I was covering the Patriots in, I think it was 2010, I think. It was either 09 or 10. And Dallas Thomas was still there, and Rob Ninkovich, who no one had really ever heard of, was playing snaps over him and playing better. I remember thinking, there's no way that anything happens with, how could a guy like Ninkovich play over a Dallas Thomas who's a big free agent pickup? And guess what? Mm-hmm. Ninkovich earned his spot and is still here, and a Dallas Thomas was cut in the offseason. And, those kinds of things are good lessons because it's really only about what you do on the field. And Denver had that mentality with their quarterback position.
Well, speaking of what you do on the field, so political shenanigans aside, what do you think is the fate of Colin Kaepernick with the 49ers at this point?
It's up in the air. Right now, I think he's their second best quarterback. They will probably keep him around a little bit while he continues to be their second best quarterback because, you have to have an option at backup quarterback. You have to have someone if Blaine Gabbert goes down. But, he's making all the money. It's fully guaranteed, so they're going to pay him regardless, and I think that's an issue. So really it's just a matter of, when does he get cut, unless he happens to go in there for injury and stars, but it's obviously a very tenuous situation for Colin Kaepernick.
Mm-hmm. And I know you were all over the Joey Bosa news. I'm curious what you think, what kind of precedent does this holdout set and what implications does it have as far as future rookie signings go?
It's a good question because I think what the Chargers tried very hard to do was not set a precedent. Each of these things are different, but agents and teams will both try to look at comparisons to bolster their arguments. But I talked to a lot of agents, talked to a lot of teams. Most people think that this is an anomaly, that there's not going to be rookie holdouts next year. And I guess the question would be if CAA and Brian Arold, who did the Bosa deal, if they have another client, are they going to run into the same issues? Are they going to be fighting for the same thing and have to hold out? I think that's probably more of a thing to wonder. But yeah, I think it was certainly an interesting situation and one I was really not expecting at all.
And now, especially being a rookie, Bosa's missed all of training camp and 3 preseason games. How much will that affect him heading into the season?
Well, he's in shape. I know that. I've seen him, But you go through camp for a reason, and I think it's important to remember that he's a rookie and he hasn't done anything with the team, except for a couple of OTAs. So might take a little while for him to get acclimated, but he's also a guy they picked 3rd overall and expect to be a star. Really, really good. So, I would imagine he'll come in and at least on 3rd down try to make some impact. But, I know he's going to help them. I just don't know if it's really going to be immediately.
All right, Ann, I could ask you questions all day long, but I am out of time with you. I have heard your phone buzzing a little bit in the background, though, so before I go, any
it's driving me crazy. God forbid I make an actual phone call with a human being and my phone's just going crazy. But anyway.
Ann, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
All right, thanks for having me.
I want to give another big thanks to Ian Rapoport for taking the time to talk with us. Great stuff, obviously. If you're not following @RapSheet on Twitter and keeping up with all his news, you're kind of doing football wrong. And during the season, you can see Ian on such NFL Network programs as NFL Total Access, as Monday through Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, and NFL Game Day Morning on Sundays at 9 a.m. Eastern. And Doug, obviously great stuff from Rapoport there. And in the beginning of that call, we heard his take on the Patriots, team he's very familiar with, and his take on the alleged rift between Brady and Garoppolo, which we've heard so much about. And you heard from Brady just recently, and could be the last time we hear from him before he serves that suspension. What is your take on all of this?
Yeah, I mean, Brady said, I love Jimmy, and I love spending time with Jimmy. So, I think that he's trying to dispute any of those speculator rips as much as possible. And I think my issue with it is it's certainly possible that Brady feels threatened by Garoppolo. It's certainly possible that their relationship isn't great. We've just seen no evidence of this at all. Every time they're out in practice, they're smiling and talking and joking. Jimmy has said that Brady's done a lot to help him. Brady said that he likes Jimmy. There's just, like I said, it's entirely possible there's something there, but I'd like to see a speck of evidence before we start speculating about it. And it is a strange situation. So, like I said, certainly possible there's something there. Garoppolo's 15 years younger. If he impresses, then Brady could be afraid that he might be out of a job with the Patriots. At the same time, this is a lot different than the Brady-Bledsoe situation from 2001 because, first of all, because Brady is so much older, that it's more possible that he could be threatened by a second-round pick like Garoppolo. But at the same time, Brady's perhaps the best NFL quarterback of all time. Drew Bledsoe was coming off a struggling season. So it made sense for the Patriots to turn to Brady at that point. Right now, Brady's still one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, if not the best. So there really would not be a lot of logic to turning to Garoppolo if things went south with Brady or if Garoppolo really impressed during these first 4 games.
Right, and that's what Rapoport really emphasized, that, and it's understandable that it is natural maybe for Brady. Think about what Rapoport kept saying is he's human, and that's, right. I know people in New England don't believe that, do not believe that Tom Brady is human, but he is human, and as humans, I'm sure we've all had an experience where, yeah, you're competing with someone for a job, and that's could be a natural reaction. But like you're saying, I mean, when I've been down at training camp and throughout OTAs, training camp, preseason, practices, I've seen nothing but, like you said, them smiling out there. It looks like Brady's more than willing to help. You see them together on the bench during game time. I mean, if they're not joined at the hip, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's some big scandal going on.
Right, and I think, when there's a 15-year age difference between two people, I don't think they're going to be joined at the hip. They're not going to have the same type of bromance or friendship that people closer in age would be. I mean, that's kind of crazy to think. But no, I want to wait until I actually see some report, some evidence, something that tells me that these guys don't get along.
Right. Well, now, did Brady indicate at all what he will be doing while he's serving that suspension? Because he's pretty much off limits to the team.
No, he did not, and he has no intention of saying it at this time what he will be doing, because he said that he doesn't want to help anyone else who might be potentially in this situation in the future, as some other competitor or some other team. So, no, he's definitely keeping that close to his vest. What we do know is that he will be allowed to work with Alex Guerrero, his body coach. So he might actually be in the area at TB12, whatever fitness center at Patriot Place. So he might be at Patriot Place, but he won't be in the stadium because he's not allowed to be.
Well, given the competitor that he is, I can only imagine that he will be at least conditioning during that time. Yeah. But, I mean, what's your prediction? Do you think he'll be sneaking off to sorry, what did you say?
Oh, yeah, I said I don't think he'll be spending too much time on the couch during these first 4 weeks.
Do you think he'll be escaping off to the islands for any tropical vacations with Giselle and the family, though? Maybe for weekends, or?
Unless Wes Welker joins them, or Randy Moss, or Deion Branch. I don't know. We might see him, off in the tropics or something, but I think most of the time he's going to be spending his time pretty seriously conditioning and trying to become a better quarterback, like he always says.
I picture him just fuming and having everything fester. I picture him like felt-face status with the hood on the entire time, just fuming, so mad, ready to come back in Week 5 in Cleveland.
I would not be surprised if that were the case. I don't think he's very happy about this situation, and I think that, watch out Browns when he comes back in Week 5. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. I did notice there was a couple of shots that I saw of him on the sideline in Carolina, and I mean, as a fan of the game of football, it makes you fired up to see him so fired up in a preseason game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that he was very excited to get on the field, and he keeps saying that about how important it is for him to get down the field in any circumstance he can. And I think, he just does love playing football. So even if it's a meaningless preseason game in the middle of August, he's going to be happy to play, and he's going to be fired up about it.
Yeah. All right, Doug. Thanks so much. Great insight as usual. Everyone make sure to follow Doug on Twitter at Doug Kyed. You can follow me at Michaela Nesson. That'll do it for this week's podcast. We'll be coming right back at you before week 1. So make sure to keep it locked on Nesson.com.